2006. My dad comes into my room with an oddly shaped box that reads Guitar Hero 2. At the time, I had never heard of Guitar Hero, but as soon as I plugged that plastic piece of shit into my PS2, I fell in love instantly. I swear, that was one of the only games I played in 2006, and I was a Blockbuster kid. I'm sure my dad was pretty happy he found something that would stop the late fees for a while. Developed by Harmonix and Red Octane, Guitar Hero took America by storm. Everyone, I'm not joking, everyone had a plastic guitar in some corner of their house. 2007 comes around. Developer Red Octane and the Guitar Hero IP get purchased by Activision, who then hands the development reins over to Neversoft. The last two raw for Neversoft, pretty much. Harmonix, on the other hand, gets purchased by MTV Games. That decision probably helped them in the long run with their licensing agreements, I'd imagine. But now they had to make an entirely new franchise and compete with the mid-2000s Activision. Guitar Hero 3 gets released a little while later, and it is the absolute best in the series in my opinion. Black Sunshine, Cliffs of Dover, Welcome to the Jungle, School's Out, Before I Forget, Paint It Black. Nearly every song on this setlist is a banger. And you can't forget Through the Fire and Flames. I remember seeing a video of a 7-year-old who was able to beat that song. I was so mad. I had been trying for weeks to pass it. I didn't even like the song, and it'd be a year or two of trying before I had enough skill to get through. Not long after Guitar Hero 3, Harmonix, pissed off at losing Guitar Hero, I'm sure, gave their response, a game called Rock Band. Now, I loved the guitar, but once I saw the possibility of playing drums on Guitar Hero, an obsession started that I still hold to this day. I remember begging my mom for weeks to get me the $150 version of Rock Band that came with all the instruments. That's basically $300 now. I must have been a little shit back then. I guess not much has changed. Rock Band introduced me to so many different amazing artists. The Strokes, Rush, Iron Maiden, even lesser known ones like Between the Buried and Me. Before rhythm games, I didn't really care much for music. I played saxophone in middle school, but I never really had much fun with it, or any desire to play outside of school. I don't know what it was. When I finally got my hands on that drum kit, something changed. As a 10, 11-year-old, music became my world, my outlet. Playing drums made all that newly forming anxiety just completely disappear. And I wanted nothing more than to be the best damn plastic drummer that ever lived. And to be fair to myself, I got pretty close. I remember doing drum duels with different people from school. No one could come close to beating me, even the high schoolers. I had so much fun pissing those guys off. In my circles, you were only cool if you could beat Run to the Hills, and I was the only one of my friends that could at the time. I'd look at my scores on the leaderboard and I'd be in the top 100 only after a few tries on most songs. I thought I was one of the best. And then I found YouTube. Turns out there's a pretty big skill gap at the top of the board. 2007-2008 YouTube was a much different website than it is today. You could upload pretty much anything you wanted. Copyright really wasn't that big of an issue back then, and no one was getting paid. It was the perfect breeding ground for creativity. One of the first Rock Band drummers I ever watched was Azurite Reaction. He was the first person I ever subscribed to on this website all those years ago. He was also the first person I encountered that was better than me, and I couldn't even try to deny it. His videos made me so damn competitive. I started learning real drumming techniques to give myself a better chance. And in that endeavor, I found I Bite Pretty Hard, another plastic drummer. This guy had incredible technique. I'm pretty sure he was part of a college drumline or something like that. He was one of the first I saw that had actual limb independence. I watched vehemently. I was getting high scores, sure, but this guy was getting FCs? On Run to the Hills? How? Every week he'd have a new FC. I had only gotten a few at that point on the easier songs. I remember watching him on Ustream. Anybody remember that? This guy made it his goal to FC every single song in the game, including the DLC. That type of goal was just so far out of my reach. It didn't deter me though. I still strive to be that good. 2008 saw the release of both Rock Band 2, a considerable upgrade from its previous edition, and Guitar Hero World Tour, which added drums and vocals to the series. Personally, I preferred the 4-lane drums to Guitar Hero's 5-lane. The fills and the drum rolls just look and feel more appealing in my opinion. Despite the sales figures indicating otherwise, Rock Band really seemed like the more popular game at the time, at least from my perspective. It had steady content releases, DLC prices low enough a middle schooler could afford, the store menus were much easier to navigate, and whenever a new game came out, you could import the songs from the previous games. For a small fee, of course. In 2010, nearly 15 years ago, Rock Band 3 was released. I'm not even gonna bother trying to hold back my bias. Rock Band 3 is the best rhythm game of all time. Guitar Hero 6, released at the same time, didn't stand a chance. And I will fight anybody on that topic. This is the game that added the Pro version of the controllers. The drum set now has 3 cymbals and is actually a decent analog for playing a real kit. Not perfect, but good enough. It really seemed like Harmonix knew where the market was going around that time, and tried to correct the oversaturation of game releases. It's almost like they wanted to make Rock Band 3 the hub, if you will, that could continuously be updated for several years, kinda like what they eventually did with Rock Band 4. Rock Band 3 also saw the release of the Rock Band Network. Oh man, the Rock Band Network. It allowed users to create and share their own custom charts. It was kind of a pain in the ass to use because you had to find a way to connect your 360 to a PC, but hey, how else am I gonna play Epidermis? By that point in time though, the damage of the oversaturated market had already been done, and rhythm game fatigue had set in pretty hard for most. With thousands of DLC songs between both series, not many people saw a need for a new disc. I don't want to get too into the microtransaction debate here, but paying $2 for a new song, or 8 to 1200 Microsoft points for a song pack, is one of the very few MTX systems that I never had a problem with. It just kinda seemed like too good of a value, even for the time. An album back then, like a physical CD, would cost around $20-25. This was right before the time that services like iTunes and Spotify became mainstays in the music industry. Nowadays, the fake version of an item is more expensive than the real thing. Small side tangent. I have to talk about this and I don't know where to put it in the video, so it's going here. Would you like to know how good Rock Band was as a series? We tolerated playing songs like Visions and What a Horrible Night to Have a Curse on this. As my real-world skill with drumming increased, I was gifted a Yamaha DT Explorer as a teenager. That is the same kit that is used in the Drummania arcade cabinet. And let me tell you, when I got that kit, I could not be happier to start playing Rock Band again. If you look at any plastic drummer still committed to the cause today, they're going to be using a professional electronic drum kit. Why? Because Mad Catz was shit. Who are they? Mad Catz was the company that made the peripherals for Rock Band 3. Basically, one of the replacements for Red Octane. The Rock Band controllers were so bad. They had a policy where if it broke for any reason, you could send it in and they would just give you a new one. I'm not exaggerating. I sent my kit in dozens of times before I figured out how to resolder the wires myself. Now that I've mentioned it, I don't think I give enough credit to Rock Band for how much it influenced my interests, and not just in music. I didn't want to have to wait a week to be able to play drums again, so I just figured out how the electronics worked. If I couldn't fix the set, or if I broke it more, it didn't matter because I could just send it in and wait. While ultimately it wasn't my career choice, I do still enjoy messing around with a soldering iron from time to time. 2010 was the final year of the rhythm game craze. If you include the tertiary games like the Track Pack discs, Guitar Hero saw 29 games released from 2005 to 2010. Rock Band similarly had 18 releases in the same amount of time. This is what an oversaturated market looks like. For comparison, FromSoft had 20 games released in that time frame. However, their games were of varying genres, ranging from RPGs like Enchanted Arms and Demon Souls to the futuristic action-based Armored Core series. They didn't just release 20 different versions of Dark Souls. That's probably not a fair comparison, though. I'm not sure I'd mind 20 different versions of that game. You can't fault the devs at Harmonix for their commitment, though. I found out recently they were still releasing weekly DLC from November 2007 to January of 2024. That is an insane amount of time to be working on a game like Rock Band. And it seems like the only reason that they stopped was to work on Fortnite Festival. I'm just going to put a small reminder here that Concord was only supported for 14 days. Why can't more developers be like Harmonix? Even though they certainly did contribute to the oversaturation of band games in the mid-2000s, a lot of their games are actually really innovative. Frequency and amplitude are a lot of fun, even on a standard controller. That's hard to do with rhythm games. And Fuser. Man, I really liked Fuser. It didn't get the love it needed, but it was a really good concept. That game allowed you to live mix songs with little to no knowledge of how that's actually done in real life. I think that it could have been an amazing game. It just didn't have the audience it needed to work with all of the licensing required. Around 2015, with the rhythm game craze long dead, Rock Band 4 was released, with an updated engine and plenty of new features, including the Rivals mode, which allowed bands to compete with each other. A nice addition for the new console generation, and the only Rock Band game released for the Xbox One and PS4. Lesson learned, I guess. On the YouTube side at this time, Azurite Reaction had moved away from Rock Band content to playing obscure or old games. A lot of his audience left, but I personally enjoyed the new videos. I Bite Pretty Hard, on the other hand, well, he just kinda disappeared for a while. He'd have sporadic uploads here and there, a new FC just to get me back into playing for a while, but it was never as regular as it was in the past. By that point, copyright had pretty much pushed most of the creators to Twitch, where people like Jason Paradise would emerge and thrive in the world of plastic musicians. And even though it says it came out in 2015 as well, I refuse to believe that Guitar Hero Live is a real game. Nowadays, the go-to is Clone Hero. As you can imagine, it's a free clone of Guitar Hero for PC. It can be kinda difficult to source songs for the game due to the popularity of the genre, or lack thereof. But with many of these games being unavailable on PC, it's nice to have something preserved that stays close to the original experience. With Score Spy shutting down, the leaderboard for Clone Hero basically, it's kinda sad to see those last few survivors start to fade. Fortnite Festival did put new life into the genre, at least for a few months. However, I don't think we'll ever see 2007 levels of hype around a rhythm game again.